All right, folks, it's gone 6 o'clock, so I will kick off this ordinary meeting of council, 25th of September 2024. All good with the live stream? Looking for thumbs up? Yep. Nala Kadich, Wajak Mort, Kan Kara Nija Walilap Budja, we Janang, Wajak Karajan, Wenyiting Gula, yeah. We acknowledge the Wajak people as the traditional owners of the greater Fremantle Walilap area, and we recognise that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important today. Welcome to those in the public gallery. The meeting is being recorded and streamed live online. While all care is taken to maintain privacy, visitors in the public gallery and members of the public submitting a question may be captured in the recording. Attendance apologies, leaves of absence. Councillor Williamson Wong is an apology for this evening. Councillor Thompson is running late but will be joining us shortly. Do we have any applications for leaves of absence? Doesn't look like it. Do we have any disclosures of interest by members? Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Lorber.
Yes, thank you. I have a financial interest in ARMC 240902, the Emerging Issues Report, due to the fact that the property mentioned is part owned occupied by a person that I also part own occupy with at Donnelly River. So I'll declare the financial interest and we'll leave.
Thank you. Councillor Lorber.
I have to declare impartiality interest in item number 240914, the cat management local law, because I have a beautiful cat named Little Bean who lives inside with us all the time. And while it's an partiality interest that I'm declaring, I believe that I can be impartial and stay in the room during debate. Thank you.
I might just get some governance advice on whether we believe that's an impartiality interest anyone with a cat would need to declare. It's entirely up to individuals, so, cat or not, up to your discretion. It's an interest in common, one would assume. A common interest, yeah. Any other disclosures of interest? Nope. Any club memberships anyone feels they need to disclose in relation to any of the items? Nope. Okay. Let us carry on then. Responses to previous public questions have been that were taken on notice are in the agenda, and that's going to bring us to public question time. So we've got a number of people to speak, primarily on two items, item 11 and item 15. So I will bring those to the front end of the agenda if you want to speak, and then hang around a little while. We will deal with those items first. All right, so I'll deal with the items on the agenda first. So I'll call David Davenport from Fremantle District Cricket Club, and you've got 3 minutes. If you can press the button on the right when you get up to the microphone, and the thing should light up red. Let's hope. Excellent. Thank you. David, over to you.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight about our submission for the lighting at Stevens Reserve. We seek to install the lights on the West Oval to the minimum standard for small ball sports, and in addition to this lighting, it will also light up one full hockey ground along with spillage into additional areas for training for both sports. What remains of the existing lights on the eastern side of the Oval is minimal and doesn't meet any safety standards for small ball sports at all. These new lights that we're seeking will enable extended use of Stevens Reserve for training and match play for both hockey and cricket, and provide increased safety for recreational users of the grounds at night. The new lights will mean that senior hockey will once again be able to return to Stevens and train. For our cricket club, the new lighting is essential for the expected increase in the use of the grounds when, hopefully, along with the City of Fremantle, we can celebrate a new female Premier Cricket team for the 2026 and 2027 season. Additionally, from a safety perspective, during the summer months, we can train and play later into the evenings, and this will reduce the exposure of players and spectators to the extreme weather conditions that we experience these days. It is our view that the new opportunities for Premier level cricket and hockey to be staged in the twilight and evening will also likely provide economic benefit to the broader Fremantle community, with players and spectators from other localities being able to stay around in Fremantle after the matches to avail themselves of the facilities here. There may be further opportunities for both clubs to work with the council to establish benefits or activities within the lights village areas at the time the clubs are using the lights themselves. And to conclude, lighting is a necessary first step for the future of Stevens Reserve. It will bring back the hockey club seniors, it will help our club to have women's teams, and subsequently increase the use of the reserve by both clubs and community that will provide the first cornerstone that is needed to help us reach our long-term goal of the much-needed new club rooms and facilities. We look forward to working with the City of Fremantle to implement the lighting at Stevens Reserve should this project be successful in obtaining the necessary funding. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And Tanya Smith from Fremantle Cockburn Hockey Club.
Thank you for the opportunity to discuss our lighting submission for Stevens. Hockey is a very inclusive sport that has always been equitable in supporting both men and women to play. Fremantle Cockburn Hockey Club are very proud of our inclusivity. We currently have over 600 members with a 50-50 split. From our Premier 1 men who went all the way to the preliminary finals in 2024, with every player representing either Australia or playing for a state, to our Premier 2 women's team, to our more social grades, though you wouldn't believe it if you saw our masters, to all abilities and walking hockey versions of our sport, we offer something for everyone. 5 years ago, the club was forced to move from Stevens Reserve to Lakelands in South Lake Cockburn to allow us to have our very own synthetic turf and to meet Hockey WA's strategic plan for increasing the reach of hockey. However, we have maintained a presence in Fremantle for all of this time by using Stevens Reserve during the day and on weekends for playing junior games, and for our sub-juniors, which are our Hook Into Hockey and graduates groups of around 50 players from the Fremantle area, as well as our walking hockey group. We find ourselves at a crossroads as we are hampered to continue the growth of the sport in Fremantle, as we are unable to train during the week due to inadequate lighting. During winter, sunset is usually around 5:30 p.m. At our current location, we switch the lights on at 5 o'clock to avoid any possible incidents, given that we are a small ball sport and the ball is as hard as a cricket ball. If the weather is not great at Stevens, we are unable to continue to play games during the day due to limited amount of light. At Lakelands, we can continue games as we have good quality lighting which we can turn on. The Fremantle Hockey and District Cricket Clubs have been at Stevens Reserve since 1969. Unfortunately, at over 50 years old, both the building and what is left of the lighting are no longer fit for purpose. New lighting will allow us to continue to increase opportunities for all players for a sport that is not offered anywhere else in Fremantle area, and to allow training and playing in a safe manner. We've seen the benefits that a good facility and good lighting have provided the sport in Lakelands, and we wish to continue to develop the same in Fremantle. By approving this project, we are allowing for both our sports to continue to grow and develop for at least another 50 years at Stevens. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tanya. Okay, and then on the other item on the agenda, we've got Nick Holt from, I'm assuming, North Fremantle Associated Clubs, representing all the clubs.
Great, thank you very much for the invitation to talk tonight. I'm representing the North Fremantle Associated Sports Clubs, and we've been managing the Gil Fraser Reserve since the inception in the 1980s, where it was born out of a bit of a user pays system. I just want to have a quick chat around the challenges of the CSRP in the existing format, and the challenges that we will find within our organisations of the football club and cricket club and all of the other user clubs. We have an existing financially stable model. It's self-sustaining, and it does contribute consistently to the cost of the facility, and we are there every single day of the year. What we would like to see included in the plan, I believe it has been tabled again, is that existing users of the facilities are consulted and also given priority access to the grounds as well during the times of training and games. At the moment, we we need more square metres for training, we need more square metres for games, and we need a policy and a strategic document that helps facilitate the growth, in particular in women's sport. The growth in the women's participation is absolutely skyrocketing at both of our clubs, and we see it coming through the juniors, and it is it's coming like an absolute tidal wave. Yes, so basically we just want to make sure that there is a policy which benefits all users of the reserve, enshrining a no worse off provision, and sets a really high standard for which the city and the users hold themselves to. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. And I might just ask the Director of Creative Arts and Community to make some comments in response to that.
Through the chair, thanks, Nick, for your comments. Firstly, I do want to acknowledge the incredible contribution that the club and the association have made, not only to the community but to Gil Fraser over many decades, and particularly in recent years with the development of female participation and inclusivity in the sport. We certainly believe it's important to listen to the clubs, and it's been good to see you at roundtable sessions recently, and I know that staff have been in touch with yourself and members of the association as well. The intent of the policy really is to create a framework that supports the club's objectives, and there's no intention to reduce your access to the space, and priority bookings do exist for existing clubs when we're working with the bookings officers in that regard. As you mentioned, you would have seen that there's an amendment proposed, which will be considered shortly by the elected members. And I think that reinforces the city's commitment to and addresses your concerns.
Thank you. And last up on general business, I've got Paul Jones on Johanna Street flooding.
Thank you, councillors. I'd like to thank Ingrid Van Dawson, our local member, and some of your staff members, Ryan Abbott and Ben Maltus, who've been very supportive in their communication as after Kevin Rowe has departed for higher education opportunities. The issues with the flooding in Johanna Street is that it's both the stormwater resolution that's still been assessed, I believe, through that area, and also the inundation from the high tide. There are two issues that I've understood from Ryan Abbott that has been addressed. One is that the non-return valve has been purchased. That was due to be installed, as I was advised, in September. Now it's been postponed to November. I don't know why. I assume it's high tide frequency, and also realising that it's quite a big quite a big undertaking to do this. So I hope the council engineers are all prepared for it, and it will happen shortly. The other one is that the funding from the Disaster Ready Fund grant from DFES has been approved, I understand, and will be undertaken once the community have been informed of the process. Can you ensure that it happens quickly and we get that happening, because that is part of the whole mitigation of the stormwater flooding, because that will then go through a system out to some inundation flooding programs in the Prawn Bay area. So thank you very much for your support so far, and I hope that those two issues can be addressed and sped up a bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I might just get the Director of Infrastructure to respond to that. You're welcome to sit down. Thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. I think, Paul, you're across a lot of the detail in respect to where we're up to. You're right, we have got the access to a grant fund. We do still have to go through an acceptance process in respect to how we claim and receive the grant fund, so that's what officers are currently focusing on in respect to those works, and the non-return valve is being scheduled for installation in November.
Thank you. All right. I don't have notice of any petitions, so I will assume there are none. Councillor Thompson has snuck in. Deputations and presentations, I have none. I have someone move that we confirm the minutes from the last meeting of council. Councillor Graham, seconded by Councillor Lorver. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Elected member communication, Councillor Kamada.
Thank you, Mayor Fitzharding. Yeah, just something I wanted to bring to the attention of people here tonight. I went to an initiative called Fired Up for Men's Health. It was at the Norfolk Hotel last Wednesday, and it was an initiative of the Hospital Research Foundation Group, and it relates very closely to the Mr. Perfect barbecues that we've been holding every third Sunday at Parmelia Park. And the pivotal points that were pointed out and at this particular exercise, which was something that I certainly learnt a lot from, was that 93% of workplace deaths are men, and 60% of men will die from preventable causes, and 3 in 4 suicides are men. Now, there were a couple of guest speakers who were very inspirational in what they had to say, and very brave they were. And what they spoke about was ways in which these sorts of things can be prevented. And they're simple ways, really, and it's about communicating and, you know, talking to one another, and it sort of highlights how important that clubs and community groups are, because these are the sorts of things I think that we don't even realise that we're helping prevent when we encourage activity that is community orientated. Yeah, I found it very valuable, and I think that work in this sort of area can really help prevent problems in other areas of life. You know, for example, domestic violence is something that springs to mind for me. So I just wanted to touch on it because I think it was, you know, pretty powerful. I know Councillor Sullivan had to be an apology for the event because of shingles, I think it was. So yeah, it was something that I found really valuable, and it relates in a way to some of the things we'll be talking about tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kamada. Were there any other elected member communication items? I just thought I'd mention the US trip that the CEO and I recently returned from. Full report is going to be prepared by Perth South West Metropolitan Alliance. That will come through Council as an officer information report. But I've been trying to report also through social media and obviously through elected member briefing some of the other things we got out of it around port redevelopment, homelessness, and, you know, ways of tackling what are greater problems than ours, but similar. Climate change adaptation, waste management, which I have to say was a bit of a how not to when it comes to single-use plastics. It was just horrifying. Zoning and city centre zoning and how that works and doesn't work, and micro-mobility. So there were some really useful other lessons learnt, both through, I guess, meeting with a bunch of people who are doing great things, but also just observation. So it's, you know, the Perth South West Metropolitan Alliance will probably report on broader things of interest to the region, but certainly from a Fremantle perspective, there were some really, really useful lessons learnt and connections made. All right, that's the end of elected member communication. So as I mentioned, I'll bring forward the things for which we've got people in the gallery. I might start with the item 240911 in relation to lighting grant applications. So if I can get a mover for the officer's recommendation on that one. Councillor Lorber and then Councillor Archibald. And did you wish to open discussion on that, Councillor Lorber? Councillor Archibald?
No, only to say that I'm very supportive of this application being approved, and I hope that's the way it goes. Thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone else wish to speak on this item? Okay, so I probably just want to observe a couple of things. Both of the clubs who we're working with in relation to this have put an awful lot of work into their plans for the future, and both of them are experiencing significant growth. And a lot of that is through the women's game, and we really applaud the efforts of clubs to grow through the growth of women's participation. As I think the speakers mentioned, I think this is a really important step towards what is an overarching project that we will continue to work on, because it is you know, much like many of the other sporting clubs around Freo, it is not a suitable place at this stage for women to have change facilities, have toilet facility, you know, even the basics are not there. And we are very aware of that. We certainly will be looking at all the funding opportunities to build out more broadly what needs to happen at Stevens Reserve. But we do understand that the lighting is critical as a first step to small ball sports being able to be played there. Like with all of these things, I think this is the first step. There are steps to go, and we'll all be working to advocate to government. I think it's also something that clubs do very well when they are able to go and excite their members about the opportunity to contribute to these kind of projects. So it's probably a not so subtle message to to members that if you want the wonderful experience of playing in Fremantle, and we know members do, this is a great project to start to see that happening. All right, well, if nobody's got any further comment or discussion, might be quite easy. We might just put this one to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. That's probably the easiest discussion that we're going to have all night. Thank you. All right, so we might move now to the Community Sporting Reserve Plan, the deferred item from the previous meeting, and have a talk about that one. So do I have someone to move the officer's recommendation on this one? Item 15, 240915, Councillor Mofflin. Seconder on this one, Councillor Van Dawson. Okay, did you want to kick us off, Councillor Mofflin?
Thank you. And yeah, I'm actually really pleased that this has come to council and that it was deferred last time around. I was on a leave of absence, and really pleased that that I am able to participate in the conversation in regards to the public open space. And just considering as well the agenda items that we have on tonight, 3 of the items relate to sporting clubs and public open space use and recreation use. And I think what's particularly pleasing for me is the work that the city has put in over the last 3 to 4 years in building relationships with sporting clubs and recreation users and the general community to understand what the needs and requirements are of our community, and we're starting to see that come forward in plans and policies. So really pleased to see that. And yeah, just wanted to call out specifically one part of the plan in regards to Fremantle Park and what has most probably long been sitting there as an asset that is underutilised, and one which would be able to deliver great benefits for our communities. And we heard Nick talking tonight about the need for extra space for sport in North Freo, and opening up Fremantle Park particularly, and looking longer term to have that ground floodlit as well. Working with educational facilities in Fremantle will mean that we're able to realise greater surface area for us to play on, and look forward to our community being better for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mofflin. Councillor Van Dawson.
Thank you. Yeah, I also second Frank's comments. Would like to thank the officers for their work on this. I think it's great progress by the council to be developing the plans and policies that support our sporting clubs and full utilisation of our reserves. Yeah, also, and thank you for the updates. The deferral, the reason for that, we got some just minor changes to the wording in the original one that came to council, so appreciate just noting one of those updates with the recommendations, just clarifying the city's intent to collaborate with the user groups and the active sporting clubs of our reserves. So thank you for that. I think that's important. Just to flag, I'll be supporting the proposed amendment if that gets moved. So can I speak again when on the amendment when that's moved? Yeah, that's all for me for now. Thank you.
Councillor Lorver.
Well, I was just going to move the amendment, given those comments, and if there's a seconder for that, we can
Councillor Van Dawson will like to second that.
Great. Yes, and I do want to thank staff for their tremendous work on the item as a whole, but I can speak to that and compliment you on that later. But specifically to the amendment, all the conversations that we've had has been about working with the clubs, and that's been the city's intention, and that's why we deferred this 2 weeks ago to make sure that was clarified. And this, I think, just gets to the heart of that, and it just makes it absolutely clear. There's no ambiguity around it, that we're going to work collaboratively with our sporting clubs going forward, and hope that this gets up.
Thanks. Councillor Van Dawson as seconder.
Thank you. Yes. Again, second those comments and just, appreciate these amendments, and I hope they'll be supported tonight. I just think it's really important that we support the clubs that are doing well in managing our reserves, and the booking process, and just ensuring that they have a say in the decision making and remain financially sustainable, and we get the outcomes for our reserves. And thank you, Nick, for coming to speak tonight, who runs the North Fremantle, or runs the Associated Sports Club there, and they just do such a wonderful job and deliver all we could want for a reserve. So I just want to see that they're supported, and any major decisions that might affect them, that they get a say in that. So thank you.
Thank you. Other speakers on this one? Councillor Mufflin? Sorry, Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I have some concerns about the amendment, specifically because I'm not sure, maybe this question could be answered, but I don't think there's any problem in that consultation where the club agrees. I guess the difficulty is, what's the mechanism in the policy that we're adopting where, well, we haven't addressed it. So what is the mechanism where the club doesn't agree?
I might ask for some officer comment on that one. I mean, I think just to be clear in language, we're talking about a plan, not a policy, and I think that is part of the answer to your question. So who's best to, is that
Through the chair. So yeah, as the mayor pointed out, this is a plan, not a policy, so that those mechanisms will be addressed in a policy. But just to reflect on how we're currently operating and the work that the city's done over the last year, relationships with most of our sporting reserves and the people who operate them are going well, and the communication lines are probably more open and clearer now than they have been for some time. And experience in the last year tells us that we can work through these issues as they arise, and we certainly understand the priorities that are needed to be given to the existing clubs who are there on a daily basis, as Nick mentioned, and operate the space.
Can I just ask a probably quick follow-on question to that, with your indulgence, Councillor Thompson? I mean, the next stage to this from the plan will be a policy that reflects the plan, and that will come to council. An individual licence lease agreements, I assume, will also come to council. Is that correct? I don't know if it's... Yeah. Okay. The answer is yes. Back to you, Councillor Thompson.
That does deal with that difficulty. So I'll be interested to see how that works out. But again, I mean, yeah, that would be the only sticking point for me. So if we develop a policy to deal with that, then that's fine.
Councillor Moughlin.
Thank you. And yeah, I suppose whilst I agree with the intent, or what I believe the intent is around the amendments with agreed to by the clubs, I share Councillor Thompson's concerns that as it reads at the moment, it feels like a veto right for the clubs. And my concern is that, and hearing the director speak, it doesn't sound like it's interpreted in that fashion. But yeah, as I read it at the moment, it suggests that rather than the city being the one to determine how our spaces are used, which could be as it exists at the moment, and largely is the intent to work with those existing clubs to manage those uses. Yeah, my concern is around that that word around agrees. And you know, if I was a stubborn club and I wasn't happy, or I was a dysfunctional club and I just go and say, no, not doing what you want, what do we do in that regard? So yeah, I feel that the words that had been amended really do capture the intent. So yeah, interested to hear others' views and consider whether I will support particularly those changes proposed for 1 and 2.
Yeah, I have to say I'm probably in the same place as Councillor Moughlin, and it's informed through having lived through the experience of examples like the North Fremantle Bowling Club in its previous iteration, where this was the situation. We weren't able to reach agreement, and there was nothing that we could do really effectively for a long period of time to what was a completely underutilised and inaccessible by the community public, space. So I don't support these words. I support the intent of collaboration, and I do think there is a really useful discussion we can have in relation to the actual policy that says what is the process that we step through with each club to reflect the scenario and the reality of that club, because every club is different. They have different needs, different things they're currently doing. I think the policy can take us to a process that articulates how we do that. I think to put it in the overall high level plan that guides how we do things does send a signal that the balls are all in the court of the clubs, which is great when they're functional and an absolute disaster when they're not. And we have lived through that a number of times. I look at the clubs in the gallery. This is not about you. This is about when things go wrong and there are dysfunctional structures, and there's a lot of frustration in the community, and we've been powerless to do anything. So I won't be supporting the amendments, while I do absolutely support the intention of giving clubs a seat at the table and an articulated place in the process of determining how those spaces are used. Councillors? Might be back to Councillor Lorver to close then.
Well, thank you. I sent this in a draft form around on Thursday, asking for comments from folks to work collaboratively to find some way to get at the intent that we all agree that we want to get to. And so it's interesting hearing that this is not there. And I just want to, again, draw everyone's attention. We're doing a plan that's going to guide the drafting of a policy. This is not the end of the road for this, but what this does is actually clarifies that when we develop this policy, this is our clear intent. And if you look at what we're deleting from, policy 1 or recommendation 1 and recommendation 2, there is no ambiguity in those words. It says, if without deleting those words, the city assumes the management of bookings for all of its sports spaces. That is what is going to guide the drafting of our next policy. And in part 2, the city management of core building elements to support the use of sports spaces. Now, while that's could work in some areas, as it has been pointed out, that doesn't give staff any ability to actually work with the clubs. That's the outcome that our policy is that is going to be presented to us. So I would like us to start from a place that actually assumes that we're working with the clubs, and then when the policy comes to us, we can make amendments at that time. So I think that this is a great way forward for us as a council. Like I said, it's not the end of the road; it's the first step on a long journey of getting all these things right. And as was pointed out by staff, we will get most probably individual leases before us as well, so we can accommodate unique situations. But I think for us to say that the city is just going to assume the management of bookings for all of its sports spaces, it's a pretty bold step, and one that I'm not prepared to make today. So I would really like to see all the good work in this continue to go forward. And without this amendment, I'm going to really struggle to adopt the plan as a whole. So I hope everyone puts this in there and we can continue all this good work.
Thanks, Councillor Lorver. So I'll put that to a vote. I just want to check whether people want me to move any parts of it separately, or whether I'm just moving it in total. I think I'm moving it in total. All right, let's put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's councillors Graham, Kamada, Lova, Lang, Sullivan and Van Dawson. And against, that's Archibald, Mofflin, myself and Thompson, so that's carried. So we'll go back to the item as amended. Were there any further speakers on the item as amended? Thanks, Councillor Archibald.
Yes, I guess it's more questions. I mean, I am supportive of the intent of the amendment, so I felt quite frustrated in not being in a position to support the amendment because I really support it in where it's trying to drive it. But the reason I opposed it was because the plan that we have before us, the amendment is part of a motion that says council adopts the community sporting reserve plan, and then we have those other clauses in it. Whereas if you look at the plan, and in particular, and I think Councillor Mofflin commented on this, you look at the section where it's talking about policy and management practices. It says, develop a comprehensive policy and guidelines. But in there, it's talking about how the city would manage the booking process. So I kind of feel like it's at odds with where we were kind of trying to go in terms of making these amendments. So I certainly support the clubs being at the table and that we get to a point of having an agreement with the clubs. But I guess I go back to that question that was asked, how do we resolve this when we're approving a reserve plan which says specific things about how we would manage the plan going forward when we're developing a policy, and that's going to be contrary to what we've agreed to if we were to look at bringing the clubs to the table in that way. So it's a question really at this point.
I might just get the Director City Business to comment on that.
Noting that this is a plan, when it does come to determining or agreeing on the use or the split of use by individual clubs in a particular reserve, that'll ultimately be determined by the lease, and the lease will need to be approved by council. So I guess that level of detail around how we manage that use is yet to be determined and will be ultimately controlled by the lease in legal terms.
Did that address your question?
Well, it still leaves the plan sort of slightly at odds to where we, where we were intending to go, which was to give the club some, say in it and try to arrive at obviously a mutual agreement. But
is your concern around the plan as amended now, or the plan in
plan? Oh, it has been amended, hasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I'm sorry. Forget that. No, don't forget. It's still anyway. Let's proceed because yes,
perhaps we could
amended.
get officer comment on whether, because obviously they've had a chance to review the proposed amendments prior to tonight.
Yep.
Whether they see that there's any problem moving forward.
I guess what I'm raising is the inconsistencies between the plan and what we've agreed to.
Yeah, I think I hear you. So, did you want to comment?
Through the chair. Look, officers will always work with the clubs anyway, and whatever agreement we put together with the club will be brought to council and won't be brought to council until we've come to agreed terms with the club. The plan really is just seeking that we try and make the best use we possibly can out of our facilities and our reserves and work with the current clubs to achieve that. It's not to work against them to achieve it. And whilst it's, the intent of the plan has been slightly modified to talk about how we might collaborate more, that was always the intention anyway. I actually don't think it's changed that much.
All right, Councillor Kamada.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well done to all involved in putting this together. It's been over a substantial period of time, and the consultation with the community, I think, has been fantastic. And reading some of the feedback in the report, it indicates that. We've got great clubs in Fremantle that have been there for a long time. They've got great histories, and I think we've built really good relationships as a council with these clubs. And I think that the amendment it goes a long way towards ensuring that that we continue to work with our clubs and that they won't be worse off going forward. I think that's the most important thing. It's great to hear the CEO and the officers talk about working together, and I think that would be encouraging for our clubs to hear that. Doesn't matter what policy or plan you have in place, if both parties aren't willing to be open to working together, then you're not going to get anywhere. So I think that that is the most important thing that's come out of tonight, and I think we can go forward from here positively, and I'm comfortable that our clubs are going to thrive with our support. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kamada. All right, if there's no further speakers, I'm going to, did you wish, no, you didn't move, Councillor Mofflin moved it, did you wish to? Yeah, because you haven't spoken on the plan. Yeah, go on.
Wonderful. Yes, and I just want to, without repeating Councillor Kamada's words, echo them in that, I think that this is a really great place, and I think this is where we want to go, seeing our clubs work with the city, and I think as amended, this is, a much better document, and that, it reflects what the conversation has been in a more clear way that is not, misinterpreted and potentially causing angst. So I'm fully supportive of this, and I think this is going to be really good for us to consider as these things come back to us in their various forms. So looking forward to it.
Councillor Thompson?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I mean, look, I'll support the plan, but I guess the issue obviously is about other access to the sporting grounds, and where appropriate, and the club agrees. So I'm just thinking aloud that perhaps what we're looking at is a policy that's arrived with each of the clubs about what counts as appropriate. So I guess what I'm saying is I want to get away from this idea that each time you get a request to use the grounds or the sports ground or whatever, it has to be agreed to by the club. So what I would be expecting is that in whatever policy we have a set of circumstances under which it is axiomatic that as long as there are no other uses happening at that time, that the club agrees that those things can happen. So it's a matter of a policy document that describes that, rather than this idea that each time somebody wants to use the grounds, we have to go to the club and say, okay, is this all right?
Yeah. Councillor Mofflin, did you wish to close?
Yeah, happy to. And yeah, I'm fully supportive of the plan, and including the amendments that have been made, and because I think they, the intent of what the city has been doing for the last few years has been formalised in this plan, and I suppose, 4 years ago, when things were happening at local sporting clubs, I would get, and I know other elected members would also get, irate phone calls from respective members of those clubs about how we were managing or mismanaging, or how the relationship wasn't working. My phone doesn't ring in that fashion anymore, and engaging with clubs around the city, it's certainly a far more positive experience. And I think what this plan does is captures the intent of this council, and to pick up on that point, and one in which Councillor Kamada said so succinctly that the relationship is important, and if anything, for officers to take away from this is that intent from council to work with local sporting clubs and ensure that we're maximising the benefit for our community through our own facilities. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll put that to a vote then. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you. All right, so we might go back to agenda order. It's going to keep us with sporting facilities and green space with the Hilton Park Master Plan. So I'll ask for a mover for the Hilton Park Master Plan item. Councillor Van Dawson, I think you were waving, not moving. Hilton Park Master Plan, yep, Councillor Van Dawson moving that, seconded by Councillor Lorva. Councillor Van Dawson, do you want to kick us off or reserve your right?
I'll reserve for later. Thank you.
All right. I know a number of people have been on the working group here. I don't know if people want to speak a little bit about how we got here, otherwise I will. Okay, says Fidel. All right, so very supportive of the Hilton Park precinct plan and master plan, and just want to reflect that this is a piece of work that has gone through significant community and club engagement. And I really want us to be aware of that in terms of, I think everyone involved has had to give a little bit. And that is what a good plan looks like, is when everyone has to stretch their own thinking a bit about what might be better for the whole, even though they have interests that are very much their own. And I know when you start out down there and you think, well, this is the men's shed bit and this is the Hilton Park Bowling Club, it's very easy to see how vested interests, in a sense, and well vested interests, correctly vested interests, could avoid any desire to change into the future. But what we actually had through this was a really, really good conversation about what people really needed and what they could give up, how we could facilitate growth across all of the clubs who are all and users of the area, remembering that there are a number of different passive and semi-organised recreation users at Hilton Park. And effectively, I think when we got to the stage of the final master plan report, it was almost like the comments had run out. Everything had been addressed and incorporated that the community had brought up. So I commend the process. I think the outcome, the likelihood that the outcome is exactly what will be built there over the coming, insert number of years here is low. I think with all of these master plans, things are a little bit give and a little bit take along the way. And funding streams obviously help inform some of that. But I think overall here we've got something that was agreed to by stakeholders. It's an ambitious vision. We've started saving up to deliver it. And I fully support adopting the officer's recommendation. Councillors. Councillor Graham.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I wasn't actually going to say anything tonight because my family have muzzled me. But I just want to fully support this plan and just thank we've got to remember that all these clubs are run by volunteers. And we've a number of the councillors here have had quite a bit to do with the clubs up there, the bowling club, the soccer club, the footy club, the list goes on, men's shed. And it's an amazing what these people put into these clubs for no reward apart from the love of the club. The Fremantle City Soccer Club got promoted to the Premier League this year, and they couldn't be happier. So it's those things like that that really warm my heart, and I think is fantastic. And it'd be great, once the sporting plan gets up and running, and we get a bit more into these sporting clubs, we get a bit more of this sort of thing around Fremantle as well. But this is a jewel in the crown hub as far as I'm concerned, and I can't thank the volunteers that put a lot of work into this enough.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Councillor Moughlin.
And yeah, I suppose just to continue on that note, the work that actually went into this plan from officers was quite significant, and the time that was committed to community engagement. So I think it's important for us to also acknowledge that engagement with the broader community. I think the one piece of engagement that sticks in my mind is the Brad Hardy Pavilion, where there were sausages being cooked up, but a sort of piece of paper running the length of this table with various iterations of Hilton Park on there with dots and the like that people wanted to see, and you could barely see Hilton Park underneath it with all the ideas that were coming through. So a significant engagement process, and one that I think truly reflects the input of our community. So thanks to everyone.
Thanks. Councillor Lorber.
Yeah, just briefly, and I'm fully supportive of this plan and hope we get it adopted and we start works on it now because it's going to take a while to get through everything that's on the list. And I think to speak to the extent of the public engagement that went into this, I think we all know it was a very intense process. Was that when this was put before us, I actually got comments from some of the folks that are in this area. They wanted to be more engaged, and the bowling club specifically was like, "We're not locking ourselves into not potentially shifting our building, are we?" So I think people were really engaged. They were really involved in it to the point that more opportunities started to present themselves to people who may not have been actually thinking about that when this started. So I think this is a great start to all this stuff, and looking forward to seeing what we ultimately can get done for our clubs and our community.
Thanks, councillors. Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you. I was going to wait until everyone else had spoken, obviously, because I have a deferral motion, which I doubt whether it'll get seconded. So I'll have my say and then move it. I don't disagree with everything that everybody has already said. The process in terms of community consultation engagement has been incredibly thorough, and I absolutely agree that all of the clubs and the broader community came to the table in very good faith and contributed a huge amount of information, a huge amount of ideas, certainly a lot of wish lists, and as has been said, also what they would be prepared to give up or how they would be prepared to work more mutually together with the other participants and users of the park. So all of that is absolutely well stated, and I agree with it. As a professional person involved in design, however, when one sets about trying to glean the brief for a project, you do all of that. That's exactly what you do. You work with the end users of a facility or a place or a house or whatever it is, and you try and bring together what all the needs are and try and articulate what it is that we're trying to actually achieve. And of course, we had our own view of the world as a council in initiating that, which was very much that we wanted to see facilities brought more together and to hopefully achieve an operational approach, an administrative approach, and a physical layout of that area that would create the most mutually beneficial outcome for all of the facilities and users of the parks. So something that was taught to me very early on is, it's great to find out what all of the people want to try and achieve, but the designer's job is not to give people what they want. It's to give them what they never actually realised or dreamed that they could achieve. So the point of collecting all of that information is to try and distill it down and actually come up with something that really brings it all together. And of course, a layperson, as has been said, volunteers of individual clubs are focused on their day-to-day needs. Individual elected members are the same. We need to make sure, though, that when we do these projects, we don't just focus on collecting information, that we also are design-led and that we actually try and deliver an outcome that actually makes the absolute most of the opportunities that exist. And I guess that's where I feel that there are things left unconsidered, unresolved, and the like. There are parts of it which are perfectly fine for me, as I've said. I mean, and I give absolute credit to the area around Dick Lawrence, the idea of the smaller oval and the like, the better utilisation of that space and the like is a great outcome. The improvements that need to be made to the Brad Hardy Pavilion and the like. It's the area more to the south, the old rugby area, pretty well south of the core centre, that I struggle to see that we are really doing a lot more than business as usual. And for that reason, I think for me, I know that we can do a lot better than that. Now, others have said to me that, well, that can still come, but we're approving a master plan. And so for me, I'm not entirely convinced that this reflects the best possible outcome that we can achieve at Hilton Park. Now, I also appreciate that others might take the view that, well, it's an ongoing process and we can always go back and look at those things. But in my experience in council is once you approve a master plan like this, most of the things are going to be considered by the organisation as being locked in, and the clubs will basically rightfully go back to their core business and with their volunteers and just keep running the clubs. They're not going to have an expectation that we're going to have a continuous program of design improvement of that space. And of course, once we start implementing it, it'll be, in a sense, more piecemeal because we will break it down into individual projects. And as soon as you start breaking it down into those individual projects, you lose the coordination and the overall ability to go back and review and improve along the way. So for all of those reasons, I don't think it's there yet. I did want to also share a comparison of the amount of iterations that we've gone through in terms of Fremantle Oval and the changing landscape of that, and the with each of the numerous restarts that we've had and new consultants coming in, new ideas have been brought to the table. And in fact, the last idea that was brought to the table was a significant improvement in the way in which that entire land is going to be utilised. And it only came after 3 or 4 iterations. So had we locked in the ideas at the beginning, we would never have got to this iteration at Fremantle Oval, which is a significant improvement on some of the first ideas that were largely led by sporting consultants rather than a design-led approach to the whole precinct, which is what we are doing at the moment. So yeah, look, it's I don't want to be just too disparaging, and I hope people don't take it that way. But I do feel that there are iterations for Hilton Park that would deliver a significantly better outcome with all of the expectations of the clubs in mind as well. So I'm fully conversant with what all of their needs are, and I believe they can be both met, enhanced, and improved with further iterations. And I hope that whichever way we go, that the staff and the council can actually continue this process of continual improvement of the design for Hilton Park. It is our number one sporting reserve. It deserves the best that we can do, and that's really all I'm trying to indicate and support through this. So I will move my deferral motion and see if I get a second.
Is there a seconder for a deferral motion? Seconder from Councillor Lorber. So we'll put a deferral to the vote. All those in favour of deferral? Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Lang, and against? Remainder. So that's lost. So we'll go back to the item. And if there's nothing further, I am going to suggest that we put the item to a vote. All those in favour? And against? Sorry.
Question, before we go to a vote on the item as a whole, there was another amendment that was proposed.
Nobody's moved it though.
We didn't have any time to consider that.
Yeah. So it's it's Councillor Archibald put it on the notice paper, but it's not been moved. All right, so I think we got to all those in favour and against. So was there any against? No, that's carried. Thank you. Okay, Hilton Park done, 11 done. Polyphagus shot hole borer C240912. Do I have a move for that one? Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Seconder for that one, Councillor Moughlin, thank you. Do you want to kick us off, Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you. Like most local governments, the Pacifica Shothole Bora is a unbelievably frightening turn of events at a time when we're trying to increase canopy cover. Some little bugger has invaded our country, and at this stage, there are no clear solutions as to what's going to happen from now. It is frustrating for all local governments. I'm sure it's frustrating for the state government and the federal government as well. Everybody wants this problem resolved. This motion is about trying to emphasise the need to do better, but also the need for local government to perhaps step up and take action if the state can't do so immediately for whatever reason. I understand it's mainly to do with, I guess, red tape and getting approvals to be able to do those sorts of things, and that's fine, but we're all in this together. We have to partner, and if we can help out and we can, take this action, then we should be doing that, and then worry about the pleasantries later on. So that's what this motion does, and I fully support it.
Thanks, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Lang?
Just a quick question, please. Some credible research organisations have been in contact with the city regarding using some of these trees for experiments. I was wondering, and they're fully supported by DPIRD. I was wondering how those discussions might have gone and why perhaps one of these trees couldn't be used for those experiments, given they need as many experimental subjects as possible.
I'll go to the Director of Infrastructure. Are you across that?
Thank you. Through the chair, we are aware of the approaches. I think that's probably one of the main reasons that we put item 4 in, was to continue to engage and be a part of any research and trials that might start to contemplate managing the pest rather than total eradication. I'm happy to follow up on specifics around whether or not any of these trees might be subject to a trial. But at this point in time, the intent generally is to engage with the industry and to see what our options are as we move forward.
Thanks. Councillors? Councillor Lang, did you want to follow up on that?
I was maybe just testing the idea of a small amendment there to save one tree or work something into that last point to offer up or come back with an option to work with one of the research organisations on one of these trees to help them possibly find a solution to this issue rather than just getting rid of the tree immediately.
Did you want to work on some words with anyone on that? Right. Well, we might come back to that amendment when we've got some words drafted. I think Councillor Lorber, you're probably wanting to speak to move some amendments. Should I go to Councillor Archibald first?
I've just got a question.
Yep.
If that's all right with Councillor Lorber.
Sure.
The question really is relating to what Councillor Lang has raised, in that part of the reason that the council has brought this forward, the staff have brought this forward, is because they're very concerned about the beetle becoming extremely mobile very quickly because of the weather. And the infected trees are very close to many host species that exist within the inner city area. While I certainly appreciate where Councillor Lang is coming from, I just wonder whether there might be a more appropriate tree where it's not quite so exposed to lots of other host trees. So we're not leaving something there that is going to put other trees at risk in the area. I just wanted to make, so that my question really is, would it be better to look for another tree that could be a very good selection rather than one that's in an area that's vulnerable?
I'll get a comment from the Director of Infrastructure.
Thank you, through the chair. I suppose going back to point 4, that would generally be our intent to work with the industry to find more suitable trees or environments to try to do that in. I'd probably just take the opportunity to remind us that the trees that we're proposing to remove have been identified by DPIRD as needing to be removed. It's their decision to do that. So irrespective of what we might decide to do with one of those trees, if we left one, they could well come and follow up and actually cut it down anyway. So they've made a decision that those trees will go, and they are high risk because of what Councillor Archibald has just referred to.
Thanks. That helps clarify, I think. Councillor Lang, with that context, did you want to think about an amendment, or are you happy with point 4?
Yeah, that was some consideration as well. When I was looking at where the trees are located, and ultimately, the research organisation would be best placed to pick the tree, the species. Like they've got certain volumes of species they're working on. They need to get a broader representation. Absolutely, what Councillor Archibald is relevant, and Queen Square obviously very relevant. Not knowing where the fig is in Bullion-Barrow Park, I don't know if it is surrounded by other host trees. So I didn't want to nominate the tree myself. So I think I've written something like work with the research organisations to find a suitable tree for experiments. I've sent it across.
Okay, so we'll get that. If it's all right with you, Councillor Lorber, we might just wrap this one up and then go to your amendments. So you're proposing to add to point 4, I think. No. I think it just might be useful while we're on this to see what the proposed amendment is. Yeah, a tree/trees, I think would be. We probably just need to articulate trials of what? So trials of alternative treatment methods, or how would you describe that, Councillor Lang?
That'll cover it broadly enough. Eradication. I'm not sure the term they actually use. It's control methods is the words they're using, but it's, the intent's there. It's fine.
Yeah. Yep. I think we're all pretty much on the same page about what you're trying to achieve here. So work with research organisations to identify suitable trees for trial, for control method trials.
Control methods, yep, that's it.
For control method trials in a area that limits spread of. I think that's probably fine. Yep, I think the intention is pretty clear. All right, thanks for your indulgence while we work that up. So we might just go to that as an amendment while we're all thinking about it. So Councillor Lang, you want to move that as an amendment? Seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Any further discussion on that? All right, all those in favour? And that's unanimous. All right, so Councillor Lorber, we'll go back to you on your proposed amendment.
Yeah, I'll just move the amendments that are in the additional documents.
Seconder, Councillor Moughlin. Do you wish to speak there?
Yeah, I'll just note right up front that part 2 is from Councillor Sullivan, so I'm more than happy if he wants to move that, or if we want to do that separately, vote on it separately. And I'm entirely fine with any of that.
I think we'll do it together. It's in the documents together.
Great. Yep. And I think that part 6 just really gets at the I guess for me some of the conversations that we've had with people in the community and other elected members about the state government is $44 million or tens of millions of dollars over the past several years to work on eradicating this pest, and the fact that these trees have been identified by Deep Herd and been sitting in Fremantle for so long, and the weather is warming up, and every 22 days these beetles reproduce. To me, is like we have to get on this, and I really appreciate staff bringing the item, but I also think that. Um, as long as we're doing the treatments prescribed by Deep Herd, that we should at least ask them for reimbursement. So our ratepayers aren't on the hook for this, because this may not be the first and only. There may be more that come. And I think establishing a solid precedent going forward as to whether or not, if we're prepared to act quicker than the state government, if they're willing to at least just pick up the cost, it's not like we're making money off this, then maybe in the future we as a council might be prepared to do more actions when and where it is necessary. So that's the intention behind part 6. I think part 2 is, I'll let Councillor Sullivan speak to that intention, but it also seems pretty clear. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lang, have you got your light on?
Apologies.
Councillor Mofflin.
Thank you. And yeah, thanks to officers for bringing this and the proposed amendments. And yeah, I suppose what I would like to think is that, local government being that level of government which often gets asked to deliver services on behalf of others, this is most probably one of those instances where we would be best suited to be able to do so and do it quickly and efficiently and ensure what is known now as the management approach. Who knows how that evolves over the coming months and years as we have a better understanding of the bug and its the ways in which it behaves. But right now, this is the best way as we understand it, and fully supportive of this approach.
Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, thanks. I fully support the proposed 6, but I'll just speak to 2. As Councillor Lorber indicated, it was originally put forward by me and merged into his motion, which is fine. For me, as I said before, I mean, all levels of government are in this together. If we are, as Councillor Mofflin said, the most able to move quickly, then that's what we should be doing. But I also want to make sure that in our kind of feedback effectively through this motion to staff, that we give them as much license to be very proactive in hunting down further infestations. And it strikes me pretty obviously that where you've got a whole series of trees which are effectively like a large hedge, they all merge together, that if one tree's got it, we ought to be, while we've got the cherry pickers there and the like, we ought to be checking the other trees as thoroughly as we possibly can. And sometimes the best way to do that is actually to chop a limb here and there and actually have a look, because it's a lot easier to identify the infestation from inside the tree than it is from the outside of the tree. And that's been shown to be the case. I would also suggest that it seems to me that the government is looking at more of a modified approach rather than an eradication approach, more of a containment approach at the moment. Now, we'll have to wait and see where they end up landing on that. But there is talk about the fact that the singular answer of always removing the entire tree may well be replaced with a more sort of individual assessment and removal of upper limbs or infected limbs or the like. So selective pruning might be the case. I know when I was on site, when the Deep Herd officer was there in Queen Square, and I said, well, can we see any of the shot hole borers' bore marks on the trunks? Can you show some to us? And of course, they said, well, no, we can't. They're all up high. And so the possibility of pruning, particularly of certain species which accommodate pruning, canopy thinning and the like, is certainly something that I think will become part of the strategy into the future. The other thing is, as I've said in my email, that particular species in Queen Square has an incredibly soft wood. They aren't typically used as street trees a lot, because even if you run into them with a push bike, you're just as likely to knock the whole tree over. That's how soft they are. And of course, when you clean out a tree next door to them, you expose the canopy quite significantly to new stress and winds that they didn't grow into, and there's a real likelihood that they will actually get damaged over the first year when you thin out around them. So it may well be appropriate to go through and give them all a fairly radical haircut at the same time. Now, I'll leave that detail to the staff, obviously, but I wanted to make sure that we signalled to them that that was something that we would fully support and anticipate that they would proactively engage in if and where it's necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. All right, do we have any further speakers on the amendments? Councillor Archibald?
Thank you. I would just like to make a comment just on the last phrase that's in the amendment, where we seek urgent clarification from DPIRD on the future treatment of infected trees, but also the whole approach that we're looking at into the future, or we don't seem to yet have good clarification on, because it really does concern me that already there's a shift to just containment or control. And when this beetle first started, there was a lot of talk about how in places like California and other parts of the world, they didn't do a great deal initially, and then it got seriously out of control, and then they just lost entire parks and thousands of trees. And so I just feel I'm very supportive of looking at the novel treatments that might be able to be applied. I think putting more effort into that would be great. But I would really like to see a lot more of a collaboration between local government, state government and federal government, just to give this a really good shot at trying to control it and potentially eradicate it, but certainly control it to a much greater extent than we are currently. So I think that last point is an extremely important one. Thank you.
Perhaps just on that last point as well, just to make the point that WALGA has a really strong advocacy position on this, and I think collectively have managed to shift government's thinking and resourcing around some of this. So I think it serves us well to back WALGA in on the advocacy efforts on this one, because not only do they represent councils like ours who have a large amount of infestation, they also represent councils who have the bulk of the avocado industry, for example, and have the biggest risk associated with mismanagement of the borer. So it's a strong position. All right, let's vote on the amendment then. So all those in favour of the amendment, and that's unanimous. Back to the item as twice amended. Any further discussion? If not, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour, and that's unanimous as well. Thank you. All right, that's going to bring us to Resource Recovery Group member exit provisions. I'm happy to move that one. Seconder for that one, Councillor Archibald. And Councillor Thompson's got some amendments which I also support, but I think I just want to say here that this is a difficult, challenging period for the Resource Recovery Group. Officers from our own council, from Melville, and from Canning are spending a lot of time working out how we can continue to have an asset at Canning Vale that, and I think this guides me in my role at Resource Recovery Group, that continues to execute on the vision of a circular economy with reduced waste and less carbon emissions. Obviously, the interesting part in that is that it might not ultimately be the Resource Recovery Group who are delivering that, and that is a challenging, complex situation that we're in. Nonetheless, it's important that we keep moving in the direction that we're going in if we want those assets to continue to be a strategic waste asset for the state. So I support the officer's recommendation, and I will support Councillor Thompson's amendments, which I think just seek to, I'll let him speak to those, but to make things a bit clearer. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Yeah, look, my amendments make no difference to the recommendations. But what they do is, and I think it's important, if you like, an important thing to remember with council is when we have fairly complex negotiations such as these, that we get a series of reports, and each time we get a report, we get a series of recommendations from officers. So I think and very few of us ever go back to reading the original report or the report that came from the last meeting. So that's why I've changed that to include some of the discussions that are actually in the report, because at the end of the day, if this comes back to us again, it will reference the recommendations that we make here tonight. So it's important for us to remember where we've come from in that respect.
I'll just jump in to say that I'm happy to second.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Yes. And the only other thing is, the only one I have some disagreement with is recommendation 3. So if you wouldn't mind just moving that separately, I'm happy. I don't particularly want to discuss it, but I just don't want to vote against it.
Put my microphone on. We'll go to the amendments. We'll have a vote on the amendments. Everyone's comfortable with that? All right, all those in favour of the amendments? And that's unanimous. And back to the item as amended. Any further discussion, questions? If not, I'll move parts 1 and 2 as amended. All those in favour? And I'll move part 3. All those in favour? And against? Councillor Thompson against, and that's carried. Thank you. All right, proposed amendment to the CAT management local law. So we've got the officer's recommendation and an alternative motion. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Lang? Sure. So Councillor Lang is moving the alternative motion. Do we have a seconder for the alternative motion? So we're just bringing this up on the screen. I think that's the officer's recommendation. So just to be clear to everyone which one we're on, Councillor Lorva wants to second the one that's now on the screen. Right, over to you.
I don't really have much to say on this one. I just move this because the other option doesn't really do much, really, in essence. This is a vote to vote on something at the next council meeting, basically, whereas the other one was a vote to not do much. So while I've got the microphone, I might just request a small amendment, please. Not the next appropriate council meeting, but the very next council meeting in 2 weeks, because I know that the staff have already drafted what that policy could look like. So the policy's there. I just think we may as well look at it and vote on the policy rather than vote on nothing.
Councillor Lorva?
Yeah, I mean, I made some comments about the recommendation that's contained in the officer's report, not really doing anything. So I think if we're going to take a step forward, we should take a step forward, not intend to take a step forward and look at things later. Let's look at it and make a decision. So I fully support this alternate motion.
Okay, so just in the interests of, I guess, transparency, I might ask for some officer comment as to perhaps what the effect of this one would be, as opposed to the one in the officer recommendation. Just I think if you hadn't been in briefings or discussions, you might not know what the effect of either might be.
Thank you. Through the chair. This motion will require us to write the proposed amendment, which is based on the Bayswater model that is was out for advertising. We'll bring that back. It has been drafted, as Councillor Lang did suggest. We will need to seek some legal advice to make sure it is written correctly, because we are referencing another local law, another local government's local law, and we'll bring that back for your consideration, and council will need to give notice at that point with a purpose and effect. After that point, it will go out for advertising, and the process will commence from there. That's about it. Yeah. Just with the original recommendation from officers, that is to wait until Bayswater have concluded their local law process. If it is rejected by the Joint Standing Committee, we will not move ahead with that local law amendment. That is what we've recommended at this point because we're unsure as to whether this will actually go through the Joint Standing Committee or not.
Thanks for the clarification. Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, thanks. I was going to do two things. You've just done one of them, which was to ask for staff input, which would be normal for an alt-rec. The other one was when I first read this, in the second line, it talks about to incorporate by reference the wording of clause 3.2 of the Shire of North's cat law. And I just queried, when you say by reference, does that mean the wording would be in the actual, in our law, or simply reference another law that somebody then has to go and look up? Because it just strikes me that if the wording's there, can't we just include it so that it's a fulsome piece of information in our local law and doesn't require copious sort of Googling to find the original format?
Through the chair. Essentially what that does is we will copy the word for word, from the Shire of Northam, and we will alter it slightly so that it does obviously make sense within our local law. The cross-referencing is purely just a terminology that we use for that. So yes, it will, in the final version of the local law, it will say it in full. It won't be to refer to the other one.
Thanks, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Lorber?
Yeah, just a point of clarification. So it's probably obvious, but just to be super clear, the Northam Cat Local of 2019, the wording in there that we're intending to largely copy and hopefully if this passes, bring into Fremantle, has that been endorsed by the JSCDL? Has that language been supported and approved?
Through the chair, that's correct. So that local law was adopted in 2019. That is what this is doing. So we're essentially going to copy the words exactly from that local law into ours. That's what this process is.
But to further clarify, that's what Bayswater have done, and effectively they've done exactly that, and that is still to go to the Standing Committee.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. Councillors? Councillor Moore.
Yeah, and sorry, just a follow-up question to that. Bayswater's proposed local law going through the Joint Standing Committee. What's the time frame on that?
Through the chair, that is difficult to answer. It will depend on when they actually adopt it through their council meeting. I assume it will be over the next month, and then it will depend on when it actually goes to the Joint Standing Committee. So it could be a couple of months from now, could be longer than that.
All right, councillors, we have a motion in front of us.
Sorry, just one more question. I only ask
Go
questions.
on.
The change of the removal of the word appropriate, given what the staff have just said in terms of seeking legal opinion, is that actually possible?
Through the chair, yes, I believe it is.
Councillor Archibald.
Yeah, just a question too. I just want to confirm that what was just said then, this hasn't yet been approved by Bayswater. Is that what was said just then?
It was initially endorsed by Bayswater Council. It has to go through a public consultation period, which has occurred. That's finished now. It will go back to Council for final approval, and then we'll go to the Joint Standing Committee from there.
All right. Everyone's questions have been answered. Councillor Lang? No?
I would.
You'd be closing. Well, I'm going to speak on it. I'm not going to support the alternative motion because I won't support going out to advertising on this again when we know it's still ahead of the Joint Standing Committee on Delegated Legislation. I think it's, there's a test case underway. I don't know why we need 2 test cases, and one of them at our cost and one of them in front of our community. I think our community have been around the traps a few times on this one unsuccessfully, and I don't really want to go out and advertise again in what I suspect is the full knowledge that the other test case will effectively show us what's possible during that period of us advertising again. So I'm really happy with the officer's recommendation. I'm happy to support that, but I don't believe that we need to act now when there is an identical test case going in front of the Standing Committee in the not too distant future. I don't think a pile-on makes any difference in this regard. I don't think that's how the Standing Committee makes decisions. I think they are much more procedural and legally driven than that. So I won't be supporting the alternative motion, but if someone were to move the officer's recommendation, I would support that. Does anyone else wish to speak, or are you just going to vote? Councillor Van Dawson?
Sorry, I second your comments and would like to move the officer's recommendation if now is the time. Is that not? Sorry, I was just a bit confused by. Okay, sorry.
No, we'd need to vote this down. Well, no, hang on. Sorry. We'd have to vote this down. Councillors? Anything further? All right, Councillor Lang to close.
I'm sitting here, it's quite interesting listening to the commentary about Bayswater being thrown up continually. I can see why everyone is confused and is asking so many questions, but this is pretty black and white. We're just asking to adopt something Northam has. And everyone's worried that Northam, that we're not going to get a law that another local government already has. Like, this is, it's quite absurd actually to think that we wouldn't get the same law that Northam already has and has had for 5 years. That's what we're voting on. We're voting on adopting the same law that Northam has, and we might get clarification again, but the legal advice is just for Clause 82. Clause 82 says that any local government can adopt the law of another local government. That's what Clause 82 is. I don't know if you want to clarify that, Melody, or that's where we're getting legal advice is on that clause.
Just through the chair, the legal advice that we will be seeking is around the wording for the use of Section 82. It is lawful to use that section. It hasn't been tested to date, so it may very well be rejected. We're unsure as to whether that will occur or not. It has not been done yet.
Thank you for clarifying. So this is not a test case for this law in the sense that Northern have been running it for 5 years. So it would be a brave Joint Standing Committee to reject a local government asking for the same law that Northern already have. And that's what we're asking for. And in terms of our community going around the traps, we're still catching cats in our traps, as our parks team will probably confirm. And the sad thing about that is, and our parks team will also confirm this, those owners who own domestic cats are just saying to us, you can keep the cat. And that goes to the cat haven with 8,000 other stray cats a year, which not many are adopted, as we know. So that's still happening. And our community have been overwhelmingly supporting us on this since day one. This is not a controversy at all, and it's important, an important environmental matter. When this is probably going to drag on in Western Australia for another 4 or 5 years, and everyone knows the data around how many, most people in this room, sorry, know the data on how many native animals roaming pet cats kill, and I know there's a couple of roaming pet cat owners in the room. I won't point them out, but that should be taken into consideration also. So this is pretty straightforward. We're a local government, and we're saying, can we have the same local law as Northam? And I think it'd be a brave Joint Standing Committee to reject us and any other local government
like Bayswater, for applying for the same law?
I would just note that it's probably not appropriate to suggest that elected members are not making informed decisions on behalf of the community. Um, I think it's just not appropriate. Anyway, we will put this one to a vote. All those in favour? Councillors Lang, Archibald, Lorva, Sullivan and Thompson, and against? And I will support the officer's recommendation. Well, effectively, I'm against this one, as previously flagged. So, Councillor Van Dawson, you would like to move the officer's recommendation? And I'll happily second that. And Councillor Lorva?
Yeah, I just want to clarify. Lil Bean, who's our cat, did come from Cat Haven, so occasionally people do go and collect cats from there and bring them home and keep them inside. And he's not so little anymore, but that's not beside the point. I just don't know that I can support, and I'm speaking against this officer's recommendation, something that says we're going to sit around and wait for another council to do something before we're going to consider doing something that is already approved. I mean, to me, it's like this is an item that has been brought before us that is really, if we're going to sit around and wait for something else to happen, we should just be waiting. We shouldn't be voting on to sit around and wait. So I'm not going to support this because I think that we should be, if we want to do something about cats, we should do something about cats. And yeah, I just find it a little bit frustrating that yeah, I just can't support sitting around waiting for someone else to do something. So I'll be not supporting this, even though I do support cat containment efforts.
Councillor Archibald?
Thank you. I will support this. I did support Councillor Lang because I did feel that what he was saying is real. There is an urgent need to deal with cats, particularly feral cats. But I still would support this too. So I think we should keep moving. And if another opportunity comes up, like if Bayswater completely approves it and they carry on, and we should just monitor it and see how we go. But I think it still flags to the community that we are continuing to be concerned. And I think at some future point, we can still make the decision to bring back the idea that we put that local law back up again.
So just a point of clarification I wanted to make based on my understanding, and then I'll go to the other speakers. Bayswater has done exactly what the alternative motion suggested, which is to use the section 82, I think it is, to try and introduce the northern provisions. So it is a test case for what was suggested in the alternative motion. You know, I won't revisit that, but you know, we know that that will go through the process in Bayswater. We know that that will then go to the committee, and we know they will make a ruling on whether that is effectively a way in which we can amend our local law. So if it is, then I'm supporting that we do initiate that local law amendment once we've seen how that is treated by the JSCDL. Councillor Kamada.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I'd like to reiterate what Councillor Archibald said in her comments. I find this as difficult as anything we've ever had to vote on, and could easily have gone either way. And I respect Councillor Lang's passion and determination on this item, and I will support the officer's recommendation, and I trust that some of the things that you just relayed to us, Mayor Fitzharding, will fall into place and that we will get a decent policy in place. Thank you.
Councillor Lang.
It's just disappointing to see us taking a back seat in a position that we've been leaders on for so long, to sit around and wait. That's what this is. So that's just expressing some disappointment that we'll be doing that.
Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering if there couldn't be some words added to this one to ensure that if the City of Bayswater don't proceed to adopt their local law, that it immediately comes back to council for consideration, because I don't want to be left in limbo, and I think the council's already demonstrated that it's right behind this, and it shouldn't just be up to individual elected members to have to bring something forward. It should just be automatic. If the City of Bayswater doesn't proceed, it should automatically come back to us so that we will proceed. If perhaps staff could just suggest adding a sentence.
Yeah, that's. Do you want to work something up there? Councillor Lova, you also wanted to speak. Have you spoken, or is this?
I had a question, and my question was pertaining to what Councillor Sullivan just brought up. Was what if Bayswater decides not to proceed? So if that kind of answers that, thank you.
Great. All right, so we'll just get some words together for that. I think it's something along the lines of, if Bayswater does not proceed, can we start a sentence with or? Probably not. Oh, good job. Okay. Yep. Moved by Councillor Sullivan, seconded for that one, Councillor Archibald. Excellent. Any discussion on the amendment? All right. All those in favour of the amendment and against? Councillors Lang, Lorva and Graham against. That's carried. And back to the item as amended. Anything further? We'll put
Clarification on that amendment. My understanding is Bayswater are already at a point of no return anyway. That's why I voted against it. I can't see them not proceeding, if that makes sense. Anyway, it's in there, and
they can. We might just get clarity on that, but there is a final decision point, I think, after advertising.
Yes, through the chair, City of Bayswater Council will need to resolve that they actually adopt this amendment, and they can withdraw at that point.
Yeah.
Or make changes.
Councillor Van Dawson?
I was just thinking that discussion's finished. I was just going to close just to confirm. Is that everyone's finished? Thank you. Yeah, and thank you, Aidan. I do respect your position. This is kind of a bit fresh for me. I'm newly elected, so I'm not aware of the history so much, but yeah, definitely want to progress the amendment and agree, but my preference would be, as per the officer's recommendation, just to wait until City of Bayswater hopefully get their amendment approved. I do agree with Hannah's comments that does look to be a bit of a test case for a metropolitan council. And yeah, also just a preference to not use our resources, like just wait for that. And then if it's, as our officer said, a matter of months, I feel like just hold off. I wouldn't want to put our resources to waste. So yeah, I will be supporting the officer's recommendation as amended. Thank you.
Excellent. Let's put that one to a vote. All those in favour and against? Councillors Lorva, Graham and Lang against, and that's carried. Okay. I know in the audit items, we need to deal with item 2 separately. As Chair of Audit, Councillor Mofflin, were there any that you were keen to speak on or that we could move on block?
I would just want to speak on 5, but I'm okay with everything else.
Okay, so I might be able to move 1, 3 and 4 on block if people are happy with that. Okay, so I'll move 1, 3 and Councillor Sullivan's moving 1, 3 and 4, seconded by Councillor Mofflin. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. I might just see with the statutory reports as well if there's any of those we could do on block. Does anyone wish to speak to any of the statutory reports? Okay, so I'm going to move C16, 17 and 18. I'll move those on block. Seconded by Councillor Sullivan. All those in favour? Excellent. Yep, that's what I was thinking. All right, so Councillor Mofton, do you want to move ARMC 5? Yep, seconded by Councillor Lorber. Over to you.
Thank you. I just wanted to call out an important milestone in the overdue debtors report, that we have cleared all of the commercial debts that were associated with COVID, and it's no longer going to appear in the overdue debtors report, and it's a significant milestone, as I said, and an issue which was handled really well by staff, and one that we stayed on top of in terms of collecting monies that were owed to the city. And yeah, hopefully it's a chapter we can put behind us and it's in the annals of time. So thanks to everyone.
So great shout out. Absolutely agree. It was something that was a frequent topic of discussion at council, and it's delightful to know that it is no longer going to be on the books. So well done, team. All right, so we'll put that one to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. We'll move to the ARMC 2, so Councillor Sullivan will leave. And I'll ask for someone to move the emerging issues report. Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Graham. Any discussion on this item? Be difficult to discuss, primarily because it's all confidential, a lot of it. So I will put it to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. There are no motions of which previous notice has been given, urgent business, late items or confidential business. So I declare the meeting closed at 7:48. With Councillor Sullivan back.